afternoon. Thank you for joining. It's very loud though. Wow. Thank you for joining this very important session. I love this series. It's called Urban Basics. We often talk about walking as the foundation of the way we move and travel, and it is very much our basic mode of movement. I want to start with introducing Walk21. Who's heard of Walk21 before? Okay. So we are a global representative organization, not a membership organization, but we represent walking into international forums. We work with national governments, we work with cities. We host an annual conference to talk about walking, and people come and say, 3 days just talking about walking, and they get to the end of it and they can't stop talking about walking. It's very exciting. We have on-the-ground street app measurements, and we host the International Charter for Walking. We've been here since the year 2000, so the 21 is the 21st century. This is walking is the 21st century. So I want to start with a question. When we say accessibility, I want you to think about what that means in your head. Just first thing you think of. Okay, so hold on to that. The first thing you thought of when someone said accessibility. Now put up your hand, or stand up if you like. Put up your hand if you thought of this. You're all very good urbanists. Because, okay, a few more honest people. Because historically, this is what we thought about in terms of accessibility. Access for people with bodies that don't function in the same way as the majority of the population. People with mobility impairments like this will tell you that it's the environments they live in that limit their access, not the bodies they live in. And this historically has been more about where people think immediately around accessibility. But today, it's also about this. Who thought about this? Access to spaces, access to places, access to services. Yes? Put your hand up if you thought about this version. Okay, some of you aren't actually confessing or thinking, and this is fine. But this is very much now where the conversation is. But I want to take you on a very quick journey, because we started a little late, to understand this concept around accessibility and how new this is for the way we think about how we are in our cities. So historically, cities were built, and they still are built, premised on the way we move. So historically, we walked. Funnily enough, we still do. Let me demonstrate. And we built cities so people could walk and access where they needed to go. But over time, cities started to look more like this. This might be a bit familiar to some of you in the room. Now, that's inevitable with population growth, but it wasn't just the volume of people that were growing. It was also the way we imagined that we move in our communities that built cities like this. And the advent of motorized travel, and the motor car in particular, led us to urban sprawl at scales unimaginable in some cities around the world, and levels of transport poverty is language that people use in this context, which really came home to roost during COVID. Places in South Africa they weren't allowed to travel beyond 5 kilometers. So they couldn't even go and get food. That's how far away their local shop for food was in some of the urban sprawl in South Africa. There's also, not Istanbul, but in North America, transport poverty. When the mortgage crisis hit, people were stranded and couldn't afford to move and couldn't afford the mortgages, and they were stuck in suburbs without access to their communities, because we thought about transport first. We thought about transport, and we got all caught up in building highways and systems, and we think about everything that can move, all those toys you had as a child, trains, cars, even the bicycle has a thing that we can hold on to. And we got obsessed with building for transport. And that's how we ended up glorifying, well, it was the glorifying of the motor car that led to this. That movement by motor car, by private motor car, was the way we invested. That was our priority mode. That's where our money, our space, our energy, and our psychology went. My friend in the UK calls it car brain, and I'm going to talk more about the UK and their car brain shortly. But it led to this. It led to environments that didn't invite people to walk, that made it dangerous for people to walk. It made it dangerous for people to move around their communities if they weren't in vehicles. And it made distances too far for people to get to if they weren't in their communities. So I'm going to see if I've got a pointer. Do I have a pointer? Yes. This is a massive urban shopping centre in Melbourne, Australia. I'm Australian. I'm very willing to shame myself to move the agenda forward. See the people who live here and here, they cannot walk to their local shops. Their local shop is there. And Australia is full of this. People physically barred from crossing the road into their local shop because they live at the end of a cul-de-sac and they put fences up and they insist on car movement as a way to access your local community. This induced demand. We talk a bit more now about travel demand management, but the induced demand that big box developments like this sprawl has generated, and the cost per household, what we are spending. We invest in our cars, the cost per household is increasing every year in terms of the way we move. And the cost for air pollution and space and all these other things come with it. So then the conversation changed. About 15 years ago, to be fair, even perhaps 20, was the first time I heard about talking about mobility, not transport. And mobility ushered in an era of talking about moving people instead of moving vehicles. And so we started to see this focus on not just moving vehicles through an intersection, but how many people were in those vehicles, and what was the capacity of that road based on the number of people moving, not just the number of vehicles moving. This is a great shift. It's all about how we move in our communities, not just about building big systems. It was centered on people. But the car is very, very seductive, and we were well embedded mentally with the cars and not willing to give up the necessary space for other ways for people in our communities to move, whether it be by bicycle, by walking, by bus. The selfishness of cars, the space wasted by car travel is, if you have one car, it occupies 4 car parking spaces in your city because it's got one at home, it's got one at work, it's got one at a local shopping centre, and one perhaps at a local activity centre. Cars occupy a disproportionate amount of space. But imagine if we walked around like people with a car space all around us. This is a fantastic thing they do in Germany, which says, I'm going to occupy this much space as an individual, but we don't, do we? Because actually we like being together, we like the proximity and the efficiency of being closer together, and the efficiency of bicycles to enable us to move people has come through in this as well, in terms, again, of space. But the thing that people forget, I just remembering the sequence of my slides. So we had the mobility conversation about people and how they move. And more recently, though, what's emerged, probably only in the last 5 years, please feel free to correct me, but I can't remember this conversation happening as actively as it does where I work, is the concept of accessibility. It's not just about being able to move, but what do we have access to once we start moving? I mean, we have access to everywhere if we move for long enough, but how we actually access our community, what the opportunities that are available within a reasonable amount of travel time is determined by our urban form and our transport choices and our options that are available to us. And I'll give you a really, really quick example from Buenos Aires. World Bank did a study and found out in a traditional transport paradigm that men and women have a 45-minute commute every day. Ah, great, equal, equality, perfect, tick, off we go. What they then found out, so if you have only one KPI, you have a very warped perception of what's actually going on, right? 45 minutes, men, women, equal. When you look at what happens there, women do about 15 things on their way to and from work. Trip chaining, as they call it, is a really female aspect. Drop kids at school, pick up shopping, do some care, come to work. They travel, let's say, within 15 minutes of home, but it takes them 45 minutes. So their realm for them to get to work is about a mile. Okay? Men in this study get in their car and drive along a highway and land in an office 45 minutes away. So they've actually gone a lot further. So women have 1 mile, and the men in this study had 25. So you're like, does it matter? Well, depends what you're trying to do with the information, what you want to do next. Because on that measure of having a realm that's 25 miles, men have more available opportunities for economic opportunities, for work and for engagement. Women are restricted, apparently, because they only move within 1 mile. Where this becomes problematic, if you don't understand the data, is that if you look at that and you think, I want to increase women's access to opportunities, which is what the World Bank was doing, it was all about uplift and opportunity, then their answer to that is that women have to travel for 45 minutes further to get those opportunities, if that's how you see that men have more opportunities because they travel further. The flip side of thinking about that is that we have to put more opportunities closer to where we are, so we don't have to waste our 45 minutes traveling to get to them. And that's where it matters, because if you looked at it from a male perspective, the answer is more highways to access more opportunities. And if you look at it from a female perspective, it's better walkable environments so that they can do more within their local realm and get to work on time. Because women do this all the time, and it's one of the reasons in Ireland that women are not accessing the public transport system and are motorising into private cars faster than men because of this demand on their journey time. And that's where you come to a conversation known as the 15-minute cities conversation. And this is a fantastic drawing of that from Paris, showing that let's put things within reach of where people live so that they can access it. Now, I know this isn't going to work in all the forms. Carlos Moreno knows this isn't going to work in all urban forms. He has a 30-minute concept for broader sprawl and things like this. But the principle of this is fundamental, a little bit like Vision Zero for road safety. If you're not going for zero, who are you sacrificing on your road, your journey to road safety? So 15-minute cities is all about putting work, hospitals, schools, activities within a 15-minute reach of where people live, and it's premised on walking. And I love this particular diagram of this. I started with a little bit of a history lesson, and this is about balancing ancient and modern mobility. Walking is our ancient mode. Modern mobility requires us to access a whole lot of things. And so enabling people to walk to these things locally reduces the travel demand, reduces the impact on our transport systems, and as our cities grow in population, we can't keep going outwards. We have to find other ways. We can't keep growing road space for these luxurious, overscaled private cars. And this diagram shows very well, depending on the different urban forms, how far and what can you reach in that time. Now, lots of people will say to me, oh, but walking, you can't go very far, it's too slow, it's recreational, it's nice in the local park. And this is when I'm arguing for how far they are from understanding what we need as a community. And you see how far we are when the politics, it becomes political. This is my Prime Minister, this is the UK's Prime Minister, who are playing some stupid game right now which says that 15-minute cities don't liberate us to access our communities, they actually can restrict and control us, and they want to curb car use. I'm going to come back to the distance thing in a minute. So I just want to talk about curbing car use, and I want to draw down on that other idea about accessibility. Are we curbing this car use? What about this car use? So when we start talking about what's impacting on whose freedom, what's impacting on whose right to walk safely with their child in their local community, it's not her stopping that driver. She can't do anything about that car sitting there parked in the footway space. And this woman can't continue down this street So don't believe any of that garbage about the car is freedom, the car gives you access to the world. That is so out of date. It's embarrassing if anyone says it anymore. So be embarrassed for them. Say, oh God, I'm so sorry you still think that. Feel free to come on board into the 21st century with us. Because this is the way car drivers think. They own and occupy space. And the way that people, I drive a car, okay? This is a mildly anti-car rave, but it's an anti-how we use cars and how we prioritize them in our space. It's not an anti their existence altogether. And I want to be really clear about that because there are times and places for all the different modes, but the dominance of private cars is displacing other modes. So this is a local neighborhood in Bremen. Because these car drivers have the freedom to park on the footpath on this very little local street, they are denying the right of children to walk to their local school. These parked cars are removing access for these children to go to their nurseries. Why does the owner of that private car have more rights to that space in the city, in a local neighborhood, than these people? And yet, when you have conversations, and perhaps some of you are having these conversations in your towns and communities right now, when you have these conversations in your community which says, we would like to take the cars off the footpath, which is a designated space for people to use their feet, and allow our children to walk to school. What's the reaction? What do we get? This is what we get. You're cutting off my limbs. You're killing me. You're denying me my rights. It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. This is why I over-exaggerate it, because it's actually only a mild, dramatic interpretation of how people behave in these meetings when you want to have conversations about displacing their vehicles that have been displacing the rights of children to go to their local school on foot. We have to. We talk a lot about, there's a word, disconnecting something. You know, the whole, I'll come back to it. But we've got to disconnect this sense of identity with cars and this sense that our car is the dominant way we think about it. Because what about these children? It's not just, you could say here, I want to come back, well, look, we can fit down there. She can't in her wheelchair, but other people can walk down that space. There's still space. She can walk around. There's not that much traffic on the road. This is what we do all the time. Oh, maybe they could just squeeze down the side of those cars. It's ridiculous. Why don't we invite people? How wide should a footpath be? Look at these children and this man. 4 children and an adult walking to school with this width. In Bogota, Penalosa said sidewalks are going to be 12 meters wide. And we went, oh, far too wide. We don't need 12 meters. Well, how wide do we need? They've just built a footpath to my local high school. It's 3 meters wide, and the motorists are screaming that it's creating a dangerous road. And why does it need to be so wide? Because kids like to walk in packs. They like to walk together, they like to walk side by side, they like to ride their bicycles. We are creating a safe space for children to walk and cycle to school. And if we want to talk about access and mobility, and we think it's only tied up in private motorized travel, then we're forgetting about all the people, like those young children, like these teenagers, who don't yet have access to cars. Don't tell me autonomous vehicles are going to solve that. They might solve one problem, but they're creating a whole lot of other problems over here. Private motorized travel isn't the only way we live in our communities. At some point, we have to give it up. How much did we celebrate children's first steps when they learn to walk? And how much do we hate losing our independence, our mobility, our capacity, as you all will, and I don't see anyone in a wheelchair, so I think I can say this fairly, stand up and leave this room on your own 2 feet and independently. We must create environments, communities, where this is not only viable but attractive. It's not about minimum, It's about maximum, it's about this quality, it's about our humanity and inviting that onto the streets of our towns. And what about for women at night time? Accessibility is influenced by so many things, whether it's fear of road danger, which is why parents don't let their children walk to school, whether it's stranger danger, because women don't like to walk at night because they're worried about being harassed or raped. And young men are scared of moving around in their communities because they're worried about violence. So there are lots of ways that our access and our right to be in our streets and in our public spaces is limited, and we have to think about how we address that. I don't want to stick on all the negatives. I want to talk now, of course, about how great walkability is as being part of the solution to this. Because if we create walkable environments where we invite people to come out and be on their streets, having access within 500 meters or 15 minutes, then you have more people out on streets, you have active streets, you have more people out, more people moving around, more eyes on street, more safety, more community, more social cohesion, better mental health, all of these things, they just ramp up and up and up. And it's not just me that says this. The Sustainable Development Goals explicitly identify the proximity to the importance of our cities and our communities. And the one that I'm particularly going to just finish off with is the proximity to public transport. Because as you see here, SDG 11.2 is about living within 500 metres of public transport. They want everyone to have that. It's limited, okay, there's a lot of targets in here. It has to be measurable with GPS. There's no measure of the quality or the frequency of the service that they've got access to, and there's no measure of the quality of the environment that people will travel through to get to public transport. And the reason that matters is because public transport is also a walking journey. So the importance of access, and this is coming back to the point, oh, you can't walk everywhere, it takes too long. It's something to do in a park. Because if we build cities that provide public transport as a journey extender, then we start to see that walking is fundamental to how we access not only our immediate local 15-minute community, but to other things that we want further across the city. This is the work by the most fantastic academic in Sweden, Norway, called Helge Hilhunter, who's not only identified that very often walking is the majority of the journey time that people spend, because we used to just talk about the main mode, which inevitably ended up being the motorised mode. So 10 minutes on the bus was the thing that got measured in travel surveys, but 10 minutes walking to the bus and 10 minutes walking from the bus, total 20 minutes in a 30-minute journey, didn't get recognised, didn't get provided for. That's where we're working on walkable catchments. The quality of the experience, and when people report satisfaction with public transport, is often determined by the walking journey. So just to finish, and I'm going to finish with a few minutes for questions and conversation, is we are focusing very much on this connection between public transport and walking at Walk 21. It's one of our strategic priorities. Not only because it's essential that we have safe, walkable access to public transport to enable that journey extender, but by investing in those catchments around public transport, you can invest in walkability over a vast amount of your city. It's not about walking everywhere, but ensuring you walk where you need it the most. And Hong Kong is a fantastic example for this. The access to the city of Hong Kong is premised on access to the metro and the train system, but in doing that, they also build connectivity and access into the local neighbourhoods. So you can go through stations, open gaps between and connectors between, that sort of work. And if you start drawing these 15-minute circles around all your stations, which is what Washington, D.C. did, you can recognise the fiscal benefit to your public transport system and also the urban benefit to your local communities so that people can realise walkable communities in their own neighbourhoods. So this is our walkability app, which it's not measuring the environment, it's measuring the human experience in that space. And you go out, you measure the customer satisfaction. We're all sick of customer satisfaction surveys. How was your experience shopping with us today? How was your experience having this delivery? It's like, so tired of them. But when you go out into the community and ask people about their walkable neighbourhoods, they've got so much to say. And that's what we're doing with the app. And what it's helping us do is build what we're calling pathways to walkable cities. I invite you to have a look online in our Walk21 resources, because cities all over the world are providing us with the inspiration to keep doing what we're doing. And I've got a couple of examples to finish. And I particularly want to mention this one because it ties together accessibility on both of those dimensions that we started with. The accessibility for people with limited mobility, and the accessibility in terms of having access to opportunities within our communities. So here we are. What do we call this? Pedestrian bridge. No. This is not pedestrian infrastructure. They'll tell you it is. They'll build tunnels under roads, they'll build bridges over roads, and they'll say, look what we've done for people walking. Aren't we great? We've given them somewhere safe to cross the road. Well done us. This is vehicle infrastructure to keep people out of the way of fast-moving motor cars. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise, because you have to call it what it is, right? This is vehicle infrastructure to keep people out of the way of motor cars. So Mexico City is going around and taking them out. So they limit access. No one in a wheelchair could get up those steps. Look at the bottom here. Look at this. They limit access for people with mobility impairments. People don't like them. They feel unsafe up there. They're caught. They're trapped. Mexico is going around and putting in at-grade crossings and saying that people walking and people in cars have equal right to this space. And in fact, people on foot have more right because this type of displacement is less comfortable. And Montreal in Canada, this looks like an already nice street. It's got trees, but again, increasing the space available so local people can come out and sit under those trees and sit here and meet. We call this pedestrian parking, right? If people say, oh God, we can't put in benches, so no, it's parking. And then that's a transport term, that's a good traffic term, we can fund parking, and then you get your benches in. Now, I joke about this stuff, but this is the mental paradigm shift that we have to make, because for so long we've been determined by those other agendas. So just to finish, the Partnership for Active Travel and Health, PATH, is an alliance that we've built with cycling and walking and active travel and organisations all over the world to bring the conversation to the climate agenda. We're working at a national policy level, we're looking at infrastructure campaigns, land use planning, integration of public transport and capacity building. Tune in if your particular focus is around the climate or national policy work, NDCs, and join us in the campaigning for the next COP. And of course, we run a conference every year to do all that talking about walking. It's not just me, it turns out. Quite a lot of people are talking about walking. We're in Kigali literally after next week. So if I look a bit frazzled, it's because there's a conference, my own conference is about to happen. It's our first time in Africa and we're super excited. So if you're looking for something to do on the 16th of October, come on and join us. There isn't, and we can continue the conversation. Thanks very much for your time, and I hope it's been interesting. And any questions while we're waiting for the microphone? Or any challenges? I'm very happy to hear the challenges or the differences. Please go ahead. Have we got the mic on? Can we have the roving mic on, please? There's someone down here at the front waiting. Look at that, it's a lovely walk. We should be relaxed. We don't need to rush. Great.
First of all, I want to thank you for this speech. I really enjoyed that.
Please hold it closer, yeah.
Studying in environmental engineering, and I would like to get suggestions from you on what I can focus more on in my profession regarding future environmental problems. Which environmental problems do you think will increase in the future?
Okay, it's really hard to actually hear you, more so than what you're saying. Can you just say it to me direct, without the microphone?
Which environmental problems will increase in the future.
Environmental problems which will
Yes.
increase in the future. Okay. So the question is, which environmental problems do I think will increase in the future? I really wanted to finish happy, so I'm going to answer this really quickly and say all of them, because we're not doing anywhere near enough. Our governments are weak about addressing it. Not just governments, we have no idea. Who here works within the climate space? Anyone working in the climate space? One person at the back, a couple of people. If you've read anything about what the reality of the impact of climate change is going to be, you'd be doing everything you can yesterday to do something about it. But to be more specific, the air pollution from cars, electric cars are not going to be the only solution. All the reports show that we have to do more than just electric cars. We can't wait that long. Walking and cycling now can help us, and public transport can help us start to even imagine hitting those targets, because as we start to move into reusable energy, renewable energy, transport is not keeping up. And again, the UK government has just delayed the introduction of electric vehicles. We need electric vehicles. We have to have them as part of the solution, but they're not the only solution. You must invest in walking and cycling and public transport as part of that, but we must do more, and we must do it tomorrow. Air pollution, safety, physical health, mental health, the increasing impacts of all of that we're seeing around the world all the time. Any other questions? Did you have one?
One last question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your speech. And also
I'm sorry, it really echoes.
Thank you so much for your speech, and also thank you for being a role model for the urbanists coming up.
Thank you.
I have two questions. One of them is, what would be your advice for an urbanist that is working on pedestrianization projects? What were the challenges when you were working with authorities, and how can we overcome them?
Okay, yeah. So,
and the second question
question.
How can we further integrate technology to pedestrianization? Do you have any ideas of?
So the question is, how do we get local authorities to do pedestrianisation, to be on board, and how do we bring technology into that to help that as well? Technology's been fantastic for walking because journey planners, maps, Google, Pokemon if you like, these things have enabled people to choose to walk because they're furnished with more information about how far things are. In terms of your argument with the local authority, I'll actually be talking about this tomorrow in a session, I think it's at 2:30 tomorrow. Yeah, about transforming your street. So I really invite you to come to that, but very quickly, build your case, do your numbers, do your data, do your evaluation. I can share some stories tomorrow where we got repeated investment because you do your evaluation, you demonstrate value. There's lots more tools coming out now where the cost-benefit analysis of investment in active travel is really well demonstrated. Demonstrate that the pushback by the car lobby is forgotten and overcome once people realize the new space and the new opportunity that it presents. There's always going to be a challenge. We're asking people, and people say, I can't change, I don't like change. Things are changing all the time, and we're changing things for the better. But honestly, do your pilots, do your small studies, get your data, evaluate, and don't forget economic evaluation. Get the money talking. Hi.
Could you hear me right now?
I'm enjoying this, but I'm going to come down because it's easier.
In addition to your comment, I'm going to say something. Unfortunately, transportation experts focusing on the solving transportation routes instead of the walkability ratio. I think Istanbul is especially Istanbul's main problem is traffic infrastructure, and we cannot solve any necessary thing.
Okay, so your point is that traffic infrastructure is still the problem.
We have not enough open spaces for the people, human people, and obstacle person, maybe we can say. And my main purpose is developing and focusing on the walkability infrastructure instead of the transportation infrastructure.
So the challenge is getting your transport engineers to do walking infrastructure instead of transport infrastructure.
They're mainly focusing on the transportation infrastructure. How can we get more open space for transport than walk normal person, actually. And I can say that, how can I say? Of course, London is a townhouse real estate infrastructure, and in London, transport people parking their car on main road is also a big problem for London. I can say that. Rotterdam and Amsterdam is maybe the best example for their taking consideration for walkability aspect.
So London is a good example of taking.
No, actually, London's some places is a problem because some roads.
Okay. Can I just come in because we have to finish? But I understand.
Okay.
I understand your basic
All in
point.
all, that's all. As I'm an urban planner student, I'm gonna focus on the walkability aspect on cities. Actually, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for your presentation.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say something really important about this. Okay. So I stood up in a conference one day, and I said, I represent 7.5 billion people. And people were like, wow, that's a big organization, well done. But that's all of us, right? The only blanket thing going on here is that we are all people who walk. Even if we don't remember, we don't recognize it, we don't do it very much. Everyone in our communities is a walker. That's the only broad brush thing that you can say. When it comes to cities and design and development and transport infrastructure versus walkability, we can't talk like this, right? Because people will say, walking, you can't walk far enough. You can't be deterred by that. You have to say, where we can and where we should do walking better is where we start. Don't start on the highways and the tunnels, albeit I saw bicycles in the tunnels last night. Don't start there. Start around your schools. Start around your public transport stops. And make a lot of difference without necessarily having any impact on car vehicles at all. Break it down into the things. Some people talk about it like acupuncture for the city. Some people talk about it like localism or whatever. Don't let how big the picture is deny you the opportunity to make a change where you can. And that's the difference between being defeated and being inspired by what's possible, I hope.
Thank you, Bronwen, a lot. If you have more questions, please come to tomorrow's session at 2:30 p.m. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming.